Let's rank the zones from Sonic the Hedgehog 1 and 2 from worst to best. This is obviously subjective, but factors that go into it will be difficulty, stage design, how fast you can go without punishment, and music. So, let's get started! Coming in at the bottom is Sky Chase Zone. While the music is super relaxing, it's simply an auto-scroller with sometimes wonky hitboxes. For that, it's hardly even a zone at all, so let's move on. Next up is the Wing Fortress Zone. This is a singular stage with a ton of rings, making for a fun supersonic run early on. However, there is some waiting to hop onto platforms near the bottom of the ship, slowing down the action for a moment. The music is good enough, though not as memorable as other zones. It chains into the Death Egg Zone, which is the final battle against Metal Sonic and Robotnik. It's definitely fun, but with so many other good zones in these games, it comes in near the bottom. Next up is Oil Ocean Zone. I know I'm gonna be hated for putting this so low on the list, but I personally never enjoyed it. The music is okay, but when paired with the orange and purple tint of the stage, it just makes me feel bored. Plus, this is where the game ramps up and places seahorses right in your path. It's also a glitch-filled level where you can be doing just fine, but bouncing off an enemy will reset you onto a path you've already been, only to get smacked by a seahorse again. Or, you could choose to skip everything by spin dashing in the oil under the stage. The only saving grace to me is the boss fight, which is one of the better Robotniks in the game. Above Oil Ocean, but still low on the list, is Marble Zone from Sonic 1. The music here is outstanding, and it's not a bad level, but it tries too hard to turn Sonic into something like a Mario platformer, stripping away his trademark speed. There is so much waiting in this stage, whether it be for block rafts or for spike chandeliers to turn into platforms, that it just feels like a different game. It is just weird to me that they tried to sell the game as the world's fastest hedgehog, then throw this zone at you so early on. Also, does this stage remind anyone else of Meatballs? No? Okay, moving on. Above Marble Zone is Spring Yard Zone. Again, the music is outstanding, but the stage could use some work. Once again, there is a lot of waiting around for platforms to align, and just when you think you can start going fast again, they put a spike ball just off screen so you run right into it. One of the most frustrating sections is the double loop pits that are being circled by spiky balls. If timed correctly, you can ball up and dash really quickly past the first one, but keeping the momentum into the second one always results in a loss of rings. It's just another zone meant to slow down Sonic, which makes sense lore-wise, but is a detriment gameplay-wise. Next up is Scrap Brain Zone. The music here is great, and the stage design makes sense as it is Robotnik's last chance to stop Sonic. However, that doesn't mean it's not frustrating. With traps everywhere, it's very hard to hold onto your rings in this zone. There's even a section on the upper path that feels impassable, but maybe I just suck. The third act of this is a repeat of the Labyrinth Zone, but it can be shortened dramatically by skipping the moving platform and staying on the uppermost path. Simply put, Scrap Brain is both benefited and docked by being the final zone. Above Scrap Brain is Sonic 2's last real zone, Metropolis. Just like Scrap Brain, the music is catchy as crap, and the place is laden with traps and baddies, so it is both heightened and hurt by being the final zone. But perhaps it's unfair to dock a level for being hard. Plus, it's actually more manageable than Scrap Brain. You can go fast here, but it comes at the cost of exploding starfish and boomerang mantises to the face. The long screw sections are the worst, not only because you slowly move vertically, but at the top there's often a boomerang mantis or an exploding starfish to knock you all the way back down. Is that bad game design, or just an enemy doing his job? It's hard to say, but the frustration is enough to remember to your dying days. Next up is the infamous Labyrinth Zone. Many people hate this zone due to it being underwater and full of anxiety, but the music at least counters that feeling with a happy tune. The argument that you cannot go fast here on account of needing air bubbles is valid, thus docking it a few points. However, it is actually a well-designed platforming stage with only a few dickish enemy placements. The air bubble aspect adds more to the mix than the waiting in Marble Zone, at least. And that's the thing, you're never waiting. You are always on the move in this stage, pressured by the drowning timer, forced to strategize when to eat a bubble. To me, that makes the experience better. But those spike balls can sure be a pain in the neck when you're trying to scale the level. It's hard, but with a little practice, it's actually not nearly as bad as some of the other zones. Above Labyrinth is Casino Night Zone. Once upon a time, this was my favorite zone because I didn't know better. The music is fantastic, and you get to play slot machines if you bounce appropriately off the many pinball gizmos. That's fun for a casual moment, but what if you just want to go fast and get to the end in Sonic speed? Well, then all the doinking and bonking on balls, triangles, springs, and other nonsense just gets annoying. What even is the point of Super Speedy Shoes in this zone? At least the boss is fun if you choose the wall bounce method of defeating him. Above Casino Night is Mystic Cave Zone. The music here has an outstanding bass line, but the high-pitched notes can be a bit irritating. The only trouble with this stage is the random chance that Sonic or Tails won't grab the drawbridge vines, leading you to plummet to a spiky death. Otherwise, it's a pretty straightforward zone with the standard Sonic 2 rules of the upper path being the fastest and smoothest. There are a lot of power-ups in this zone, making it fun to go fast and chain them all together. The Fireflies kinda suck though, as they do delay the momentum. But at least the boss is fun again. Next up is Hilltop Zone. This is basically a secondary Green Hill or Emerald Hill zone, just with a little more complexity and one jazzy soundtrack that sounds like a melodic baby cry. The loops and chutes of the stage feel great, and the little trolleys are fun to ride as well. The Earthquake section can be a little tricky, but the platforms pretty much point the way, and you get to be invincible during that, so rising lava is no concern at all. The boss fight is a good one too. The only real downfall of this zone are the springboards that sometimes don't send you high enough, but that's a minor thing. We're nearing the top now! Above Hilltop Zone is the next best zone, Starlight. This zone has some of the best music in all of Sonic, and it's such a nice break from the stress of the Labyrinth zone before it. The first two acts of the zone, like Hilltop, sort of act like a secondary Green Hill zone with casual loops. The only trouble is they do have some nasty spike enemies and little bomb guys that explode shrapnel at all kinds of angles, so you will take more hits here than an entry-level zone. The boss is kind of not that exciting in this zone too, which docks it a little. But the overall experience is peaceful and fun, pushing it high up on the list, especially for Sonic 1 stages. Aquatic Rune Zone is up next. I originally hated this zone as a kid back when you could rent the Sega Genesis from video stores. However, with practice, it's actually a super fast zone with easily predictable traps to keep your speed up. The first act can be beaten in about 45 seconds if you're really going for it, and oddly the bottom path of the second act is incredibly fast, even though Sonic 2 usually has dangerous and slow bottom paths. Messing up here is a real heartbreak, because I often look forward to hitting the goal in under a minute with a ton of rings, as it's pretty easy to do and feels great while doing it. The music is a little weird, but just like the zone itself, with time, I've come to like it. There's only 3 zones left, what's it gonna be? Well, next up is Chemical Plant Zone. The music is one of the best Sonic has ever offered, and the stage design is a grand display of speed. The first act can be beaten in under a minute with a slew of rings, pretty much guaranteeing a free continue. The only potential downside to it are the pneumatic tubes that you just have to sit back and watch, but they're so fast that it's part of the fun. Act 2 is infamous for its chemical bath and drowning deaths back when we were kids with no skill, but once you know what you're doing, even Act 2 can be beaten in under a minute, minus the boss fight itself. It's fast, it's easy, and the music slaps. What more can you possibly ask for in a Sonic game? Only 2 zones left, and it's probably the hardest decision. Green Hill or Emerald Hill? Well, I'm gonna have to give second place to Green Hill from Sonic 1. Don't get me wrong, it's a fantastic zone with iconic music. However, it has sections where you can get trapped on spikes or otherwise get stalled without the ability to spin dash, forcing you to wait on a platform or run slowly backwards for a little bit to gain momentum and bust through a wall. For that, it's just a tinge lower ranked than the number 1 zone. And the number 1 zone goes to Emerald Hill Zone from Sonic 2. Why is it better than Green Hill? Well, it too has outstanding music, and the stage design plays much faster than Green Hill. With the ability to spin dash on command, you are no longer drastically slowed down by sudden slopes. There are also more loops and twirls and rings than Green Hill, making for a perfect opening experience to Sonic and his trademark speed. The final boost to the boss of Act 2 always kind of upsets me that there isn't an Act 3, because it would feel so good to hit a signpost with that low of a time. But hey, it's still fun. And there you have it, all the zones from Sonic 1 and 2 ranked from worst to best. This was actually a lot harder to decide on than I originally thought, but ultimately Fun Factor was the deciding vote. What zones are your favorite? Feel free to discuss below, and if you want, check out my Let's Plays of both games. Thank you for watching.